Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm excited to be presenting EHRSHOT, a new benchmark for few-shot evaluation of foundation models for electronic health records, or EHRs for short. But first, who cares, and why do we need such a benchmark? Well, you probably heard of foundation models, like ChatGPT and Google Bard. And as awesome as they are, imagine how much more awesome it would be if we could harness their power to improve healthcare for millions of patients. Well, instead of imagining, you can just read one of the hundreds of recent headlines or papers about foundation models for healthcare, and we share in their excitement for the potential of this technology. But a model is only as good as its data, and when it comes to healthcare, that data comes in the form of EHRs. An EHR is simply a sequence of medical events that happen to a patient over time. As you can see here, there are many types of events that can occur to a patient. For this talk, we'll focus primarily on the structured data within the EHR, so things like diagnoses, procedures, and medications. Tying everything together, the core claim then is that foundation models, when trained on millions of unlabeled patient EHRs, can learn general patterns of human health that then translate across many different downstream tasks. For example, the early detection of cancer or predicting the readmission risk of a patient. This is in the same way that ChatGPT, when trained on the text of the internet, is able to generalize to many downstream tasks involving natural language. And we do see this borne out in research. Foundation models trained on EHRs exhibit better performance in low-label settings, what I call sample efficiency on the slide, as well as better adaptation to a diverse range of downstream tasks, shown in the middle, and improved robustness to data drift, shown on the right. Unfortunately, though, each of these findings has major limitations. First, they don't evaluate models in legitimate few-shot settings, and what I mean by that is settings with less than 100 labeled examples. Second, the datasets of these papers is often limited to the ICU and emergency departments, which gives a very narrow view of a patient's overall health journey. And third, these works often only evaluate models on a narrow set of downstream tasks. Compounding these evaluation challenges is the fact that almost no models have publicly available weights, making it virtually impossible to validate their performance claims. Of the 34 published foundation models covered in this prior survey, only 25 had publicly available code, and only 4 had publicly available model weights. So, while many benchmarks for EHRs currently exist, they offer a very narrow view of patients, often just limited to the ICU and emergency department. They evaluate on a small set of tasks. They are not designed for few-shot evaluation, and they do not publicly release the weights of the models they test. And this is why we created EHRSHOT, a benchmark containing the longitudinal EHRs of 7,000 patients, as well as the full weights of a 141 million parameter foundation model trained on 2.5 million de-identified patients. As you can see here, EHRSHOT plugs many of the gaps that we identified in prior ML for healthcare benchmarks. To give a super quick overview of how we constructed EHRSHOT, we sampled roughly 7,000 patients from Stanford Hospital, labeled them for 15 clinical tasks, and released their de-identified EHRs. In parallel, we pre-trained a foundation model based on the Climber architecture on 2.5 million patients. In our paper, we demonstrate the superiority of the foundation model that we train across all task groups and few-shot settings. Here, the blue line is the foundation model, and the red line is the best traditional machine learning baseline. The y-axis is performance, where higher is better, and the x-axis is the number of few-shot training examples, where the left-hand side is the fewest number of labeled examples and the right-hand side is the most. As you can see in these plots, the blue foundation model outperforms the traditional machine learning baseline across all task groups and number of labels. But don't just take our word for it. We are releasing the full code for data preprocessing and running our models on GitHub at the link shown here. And coming soon, the full EHR dataset will be made available to researchers at the Stanford AMI Center. Please check out our website at earshot.stanford.edu for updates as we finalize the full dataset release and keep a running leaderboard of top-performing models. In conclusion, I'd like to thank the full EHRSHOT team, myself, Rahul, Ethan, Jason, and Dr. Shah, as well as the Shaw Lab and Stanford Research IT for their support, as well as all of our funding sources. Thank you for your time, and we're excited to see what you do with EHRSHOT next.